From the meditator's perspective, you're able to handle more projects and do more things, and it feels normal. To someone from the outside, it might look like, whoa, how are you accomplishing all of that? How is this happening? And that's because after about 6 to 8 weeks of twice daily practice, there's a lot more connectivity between the left and right parts of the brain. Those two hemispheres are more connected together. So we see, the left brain is a lot more rational in thinking and logical, and we have the right brain, which is more creative and imaginative. And so those qualities begin to integrate together. Rather than moving back and forth so much, it's more about being able to, think simultaneously, both creatively and also rationally at the same time. With that, we find that meditators report being able to handle greater amounts of more demanding situations.
Welcome back to High Intensity Health Radio. It's Mike Mutzel here. We're live with my cousin, Hunter Cressman, and he's going to teach us all about meditation. He's an expert and has helped hundreds, if not thousands. I don't really know at this point. We'll have to ask him. Many people improve their lives through Vedic meditation. So he's a mechanical engineer by training, and he's going to tell his journey. But he's now practicing in the New York City and Los Angeles area, helping individuals learn meditation and improve their minds. So Hunter, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's great.
I'm excited. So we had coffee and washi tea and lunch about 2 weeks ago in New York City, and you shared this fascinating story about your journey. So you had this, prestigious job as an operations engineer at a great, company in New York City, and you quit to go learn and to help people learn meditation. So kind of talk to us about your education, your job at David Yurman, and why you quit and why you're so passionate about meditation.
Yes, thanks, Mike. So I'm actually moved to New York about 6 years ago, bought a one-way ticket, had no plan in mind. And the moment I arrived, things just started to line up for me. And one of those first things that happened when I arrived was I met this guy who taught meditation. And I became really interested and intrigued by what he had to offer with this technique called Vedic Meditation, because he seemed to be so calm and happy and a little different from the rest of my friends. And I could tell there was something he had that was really benefiting him. So he attributed to this technique of meditation. And so I ended up taking his course and found incredible benefits immediately. One of the first things I noticed was my sleep patterns completely shifted. I used to have pretty bad insomnia from studying engineering in college. I studied mechanical engineering at Loyola Marymount University in LA, and used a lot of my left brain, heavy in the sciences and the mathematics for the engineering. And so that overanalysis translated into my social life, which was not very beneficial for me. So I found the meditation technique to really help calm my mind and really calm all of that chatter, that voice in the head repeats the stories over and over again. Within a couple weeks of practicing this very effortless, simple meditation every day, that voice completely went away. So I continued practicing. I found the benefits to continuously grow and increase. One of the qualities that one experiences when they practice this regularly is this inner sense of supreme inner contentment, and it's experienced from this deep inner silence that can be achieved rather effortlessly. You'd be surprised. I thought going into the practice that it would be very difficult to settle into it and calm my mind because it was so busy, but this technique uses these very special mantras. They're personalized mantras, and it's these sounds that don't have meaning that actually allow the mind to transcend thought very effortlessly. So as I continued practicing, I had just moved to New York, and I started working for David Yurman. He's a jewelry designer based in Manhattan, and I started working for him as a process engineer. Initially as a product development engineer, I was working with the design team and developing all of their brand new designs into manufacturing. And was meditating every day while I was doing that job. And I was able to, incorporate the practice twice a day for 20 minutes in the morning before I would, go out to work. I would just wake up, take a shower, brush my teeth, do a little 20-minute meditation, and then I'd have some coffee and I'd have my breakfast, and and then I'd find some time in the afternoon. I would either take, a midday coffee break and, tell my colleagues I was going to have some coffee, but I would just sneak off and meditate after work. And I found it to be, after a few months of practicing, it became very easy to do twice a day. And suddenly it almost became like sleeping and eating. I just didn't almost even notice that I was meditating. It was just very much a part of what I did. And didn't find it taking away from anything in my life, only adding to it and enhancing and enriching every aspect of it at work and in my social life. At work specifically, I found myself able to work with a variety of personalities and really come fresh every day without any of the stress from the day before. Socially, I was able to connect and meet new people, without any kind of fear or anxiety around social circumstances. There's an inherent fearlessness that gradually develops with doing this practice. So I started inquiring about advancing my practice and learning more about where this all came from. This technique comes from the Veda, Veda. That's why it's called Vedic Meditation. Vedic simply means from the Veda. And the Veda is the source of knowledge from where all yoga practices come from, and Ayurvedic medicine. This technique comes directly from that source of knowledge. So it dates back, the Veda dates back over 5 to 10,000 years. So it's very profound ancient knowledge that's time tested. And so as I was doing my advanced techniques, I felt the desire to want to be able to share this tool with more people. So what I did was I ended up, once I became eligible to become a teacher to do the training, I applied and was accepted. And I flew out to India, the Himalayas in the north of India, outside of a place called Rishikesh. And I spent 3 solid months there, doing lots of meditation and lots of intensive studies to prepare for teaching. And I came back and began teaching right away, and that's been over a year now. So I spent 5 years at David Yurman, and it was a great time. It was great working with them, and I just felt this calling to bring this technique to people, and it felt like the right time. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of awareness right now around meditation, which is great, and more and more people are getting on board with it. So it's an exciting time to look into these practices and try them out for yourself.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a fantastic story for a couple different reasons. I mean, the serendipitous interaction was a complete life changer, and it improved your health. I mean, you admitted, when we spoke and so forth, just the mental clarity, the ability to, manage complex tasks while you're working as an engineer and so forth, and then climb up the ladder at your work really improved. And then here you are now helping so many different people. So I think that's really important for people to realize that there's really no coincidences in life. When we're energetically open to various things and put good intentions, opportunities present themselves. And that was an example of one of them. But let's kind of talk about that moment where you were contemplating moving to India. Like, what sort of thoughts were going through your head? How'd you get the courage to tell your boss and your family that you're going to quit this high-paying, great job to go study meditation? Like, walk us through that.
Good question. So it actually was very clear and very simple. It was the charm to do that was there, and there was really actually no question about it. There was not much of a discernment process. It was simply like, this is what I want to do, and I followed through with it. Every step of the way, it felt right, and that's what I paid attention to. The technique of this meditation allows the intellect to kind of take a chill pill, if you will, and calm down so that the mind can actually really connect with the intuition or the fine level of feeling. And it's that fine level feeling that guides the mind in the right direction. The intellect loves to pipe in and make decisions for us, but it doesn't prove to be a very effective decision maker. So when we use this tool, meditation, to calm the intellect and calm the mind, it can really clear up that connection into that space of fine level feeling, and it can guide us in the right direction. And when you're meditating every day, that sort of guidepost, it alerts you with this sensation of charm and bliss when you're moving in the right direction. And so every step of the way, it felt right. And in terms of letting the business know about this transition, they were very understanding and very excited about this new change. And my boss was really curious about meditation, and when I got back, I ended up teaching her and a few other colleagues. So that's been great. And yeah, it's been pretty easy and pretty smooth. I still keep in touch with them.
Fantastic. And you hit on the intuition and kind of that sense of calmness and kind of knowing that you're doing the right thing. I think since I've started really taking heart math very seriously, and honestly, I've struggled getting into that meditative state. So we're going to learn some tips from you, but want to just kind of highlight some of the health benefits, and maybe you can expound upon that. So improved attention, you talked about, or attention to detail and intention. You talked about improved sleep. I was doing a PubMed search, and there was, I think, 4,000 different articles using the bracket meditation. So everything from PTSD, reducing cortisol, reduce colon and cervical cancer prevalence, or is high blood pressure. I mean, the list goes on and on. And now that you've been doing this for quite some time and you've helped a lot of other people, what are some of the immediate and maybe long-term benefits that you've noticed, maybe condition specific? Someone comes to you with anxiety or sleep issues. Like, what are some aha moments and health improvements that you can share with us?
Great question. So in terms of physical health in the body and how meditation helps with that, there's the root of a lot of our illnesses is stress. Some research says that 80% of illnesses are attributed by stress. It's a pretty big chunk of illness attributed by stress. So if we're able to eliminate stress from the picture, then we'll just get sick less often. And this is what we find with people who practice meditation, this particular style of meditation, twice daily. We find that we get sick less often. And it's simply because we're in overdrive. In our culture, we're expected to achieve a high level of success in a short period of time. And this mentality can really drive us in a direction of accumulating stress. Now, this is a very important point. Stress is not a bad thing. Accumulating stress is a bad thing. Stress can actually motivate us and allow us to succeed and achieve. But if we're staying stressed, that's where the health problems come in play. So what we want to do is have a technique that allows the mind and body to release the stress from the nervous system so that it doesn't accrue. And this is what Vedic meditation does. All it is really a stress relieving tool. What it does is it allows the mind to de-excite very effortlessly with a mantra. And as that happens, the body gets incredibly deep levels of rest. And as the body's getting that rest, it's actually measurably 3 to 5 times deeper than any point in a night's sleep. So the rest you're getting during this practice of meditation is much more profound than sleep. And it's this deep level of rest that actually allows the nervous system to unwind and dissolve stress triggers that are embedded in the biology. And stress triggers, we call them premature cognitive commitments. And these premature cognitive commitments essentially are stress triggers that are memorized by the mind whenever the mind goes into a state of fight or flight mode. So, for example, it's built in our programming to, be alarmed whenever there's a predator around or we're in danger. And this is, obviously effective, thousands of years ago from, saber-toothed tigers and things like that. But this day and age, the way that we react to stressful situations isn't quite relevant in the same way. So when the body goes into this fight or flight mode, we see a dramatic increase in cortisol and adrenaline. So the adrenal glands are working pretty hard. The skin becomes more acidic, so that if you were being attacked by a predator, you wouldn't taste as good. The blood thickens, it coagulates, so that if you were to get harmed by a predator, you wouldn't bleed out. The digestive tract and the bladder begin to release, so that you become lighter and you can be a faster runner. All of these different things are happening in the body in order to prepare for fighting or flighting from a predator. And since that's not so relevant in this day and age in modern life, our physical reaction creates behavior that's not beneficial to anyone or in our experience. So we end up having these reactions that are not really relevant to what's happening. So what we do is we release these stress triggers from our system simply by doing this technique. And then we find that when we're in stressful situations, we can react to them in a much more calm manner. And it's not so much of a reaction, but you're just simply responding to the situation rather than reacting to it.
Love it. I didn't know if you were going to continue on with that. So that's really great information. And what I also find is people, the perceived stress, there's, like you talked about, maybe someone's, honking your horn, or there's a deadline or something like that. But it's easy to create these fictitious scenarios in our head, about like someone's mad at me, or this person didn't reply to me on text message. So what are they thinking? All these things kind of create that physical stress, even though it's kind of made up in our head. And what I kind of gathered from when you first introduced, this topic and the benefits that you experience, the slate sort of gets wiped clean. So maybe we're not as reactive to some of these perceived, thought patterns in our head. Is that what we're saying? It kind of clears the slate so that we can really be present and focused in the moment, and not worrying about all these, stories in our head that are not true.
Yes. So what happens is, whenever you find yourself thinking about the past or dwelling or worrying about the future, and the mind's taken away from the present moment, that's simply because of these stress triggers. Mm-hmm. So the way that it works is when the body goes into the fight or flight mode, the mind maps out the environment through all the five senses. For example, if you had a beautiful bouquet of star lilies, and that beautiful fragrance was in the room, and your friend called you to tell you that they fell and went to the hospital, that phone call creates a stressful reaction. That change in expectations creates that reaction. And so the mind maps out the room, and that smell and that fragrance of the flower is now associated with the stressful experience. And so now, you go to the hospital to see your friend, and you smell that fragrance of the flower coming from someone's room, and it stresses you out. Or you go to a party and someone has a nice bouquet, and that smell in the room stresses you out. But it's all subconscious. We don't even realize that these stress triggers are actually drawing the mind into the past or the future, or stirring up a particular emotion of anxiety or fear. These are all just from stress triggers in our environment. So when we release the triggers from our system, we're no longer reacting irrelevantly in situations where there's no reason to react. And then naturally the mind finds itself in the present moment. The present moment is the natural state of the mind, and it's the stress that brings the mind out of the present moment. So what we want to do is just get rid of the stress from our system so the mind can naturally be in its present state.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And one thing that comes to mind when you brought up, that smell sensation triggering, a negative association. Another example would be music. If we hear a song that was popular back in, our senior prom or high school, or when we were kids, we get like instantaneously brought back to that moment. And normally that's associated with something positive, or maybe you're dating someone or whatever. So like you said, these things are all happening very quickly, very subconscious. So that kind of reinforces what we're going to get into is why everyone should be doing this technique, because this is going on all around us. But I want to finish off on something. We've talked about the brain a little bit with emotions, but let's talk about memory. There's a lot of good data showing that regular meditators have enlarged hippocampal regions in their brain, which is associated with memory and word recall and retrieval and stuff like that. So what are some of the improvements that we can get, because everyone's trying to biohack their brain, how to, learn quicker and faster and incorporate new tasks and all this sort of stuff. What have you seen in your own life and maybe others in terms of memory and improved cognition?
Very good question. So what we see after about 6 to 8 weeks of twice daily practice, there's a lot more connectivity between the left and right parts of the brain. Those two hemispheres are more connected together. So we see, the left brain is a lot more rational and thinking and logical, and we have the right brain, which is more creative and imaginative. And so those qualities begin to integrate together. Rather than moving back and forth so much, it's more about being able to, think simultaneously, both creatively and also rationally at the same time. And with that, we find that meditators report being able to handle greater amounts of and not stress, but more demanding situations. But from the meditator's perspective, they don't notice it quite the same because the energy is just there. And when you practice twice a day, you normalize the energy that's building over time as it's building. So from the meditator's perspective, you're able to handle more projects and do more things, and it feels normal. To someone from the outside, it might look like, whoa, how are you accomplishing all of that? How is this happening? And that's because they don't have that same ability yet to directly access that source of energy that's actually innate within us. We have all of these qualities and inside of us that we're able to enliven by doing the practice, and it's simply by getting rid of stress from the system. It's coming back into that present moment. You take a look at kids, for example. Little kids, they're very, very naturally in the present moment all the time, and they can just quickly go from crying to laughing to smiling again, to having a conversation, and they're able to bounce back very quickly from different environments and different changes that are happening around them. They're able to adapt very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at adaptation energy. Adaptation energy is the ability to the ability to adapt to a change of expectations. And it's when we get rigidly attached to a specific outcome or specific timing of a particular outcome that's when suffering and stress comes. And when we're in the present moment, we can kind of just move with the flow, and things seem to just line up the way they need to anyways. There's a lot of overthinking and overanalysis that happens in all of the actions we take and the decisions we make. And what we realize through experience of meditation is we don't actually have to overthink everything. We can actually kind of relax and enjoy, and what we need to know will come to us.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, fantastic. Now it'll make us better with our spouses and partners and coworkers and parents and children and everything. If we're just more adaptable and we can all think of people that come to our mind that are very inflexible and rigid, and it becomes awkward sometimes hanging out with them because things become a little bit too, if you are a little late or something comes up, traffic, it becomes a major problem, and that's no fun. So we want to increase the flexibility and throughout our lives. And so, Hunter, when I've heard you say several times, 20 minutes twice a day, I can tell some of our listeners might be like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time to do that. That is so much, but here's the list of what of course, everyone wants all these benefits, increase, intention and, memory, performance enhancements, all these different benefits. So what do you say to people, and how do you go from zero meditation to 20 minutes twice a day? Is there a ramp up period? Kind of share some tips there.
It's a good question. So 20 minutes twice a day at first sounds like a lot, but what happens is when you actually make this time for yourself and you carve out this time, 20 minutes twice a day for yourself, you actually are becoming more efficient and more effective throughout the day. It's like pulling back the string on a bow, and you're building all of that potential energy. And the moment you let go of the string, that arrow hits the target. So meditating twice a day is like having that bow. It's very efficient. You're taking time and being very precise and using that energy to be more productive and efficient throughout the day. Whereas, without meditation, it's like you don't have the bow, but maybe you got the arrow. So you're running around maybe like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to find the target with this arrow. So it's what the technique does is it just makes every aspect of life more elegant and fruitful in a way that has less friction and less stress and less suffering.
The general recommendation is within 10, 20 minutes of waking and then sometime before bed. Is that generally what you suggest?
Yeah, so this is 20 minutes twice a day for this particular technique of meditation. There's lots of different kinds of techniques out there that may advise different amounts of time. And, whatever style of meditation you decide to learn, first I recommend finding a teacher that you connect with and that you resonate with. And a style of practice that seems, charming and inviting to you. It's important, definitely, I recommend if you have the opportunity to learn in person by an instructor, that's definitely the best way to go about it, and learn from a true expert who's had, good training. That's key. And, there could be a ramp-up period for different styles of practice. In this particular technique, the way I teach it is in person. I have group courses, and I also teach privately over a period of 4 consecutive days. And we meet for about 90 minutes each day. And you're given a personal mantra in this technique, which you use to, silently in the mind, allow the mind to transcend thought. And over the 4 days, we practice this together, and you'll practice it on your own as well. So you get a sense of what it's like to do it on your own. And we talk about, how to fit this into twice a day, all the logistics of sitting comfortably with your back supported, and being able to meditate in any kind of space you feel safe and comfortable, whether it's sitting in your car, parked in the parking lot or on the side of the road, or at your office, at home, maybe public transportation, on the train. You really can do this practice pretty much anywhere you feel safe and comfortable. Which is really nice, and it makes it much easier to incorporate twice a day. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular technique, you can very easily go from nothing to 20 minutes twice a day. And I teach in New York City. I'm based here in New York City. And I also teach out in San Francisco and Los Angeles, and also out in England.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that's what I can offer. And, it's there's lots of different meditations out there right now. And it's also important to be clear about the different styles of meditation. There are techniques that are more contemplative. There are techniques that use focus and concentration. There's and guided meditations. And they're all very different and yield different results in different ways. So it's important to understand that as well, that not all meditations are created equal. Playing your tennis every morning, if you love to play tennis, or going for your swim, or running your dog, whatever it is you like to do that feels like a ritual for you, and maybe you consider it meditative, it's not the same thing as meditation. So it's also important to remember that as well. These techniques do different things, and I can speak to Vedic meditation. What it does is it allows the mind effortlessly to transcend thought completely. So it kind of is its own unique category of meditation.
I hear that a lot where my wife is one example. Running for her is meditation. And I've also had told her, like, yeah, it's not the same. I mean, I've done endurance training before and I know how you can get into that calm state, but it's the biological effects and the neurology, like how you feel, mentally is totally different afterwards. So I'm glad you clarified that so that people can kind of understand that, okay, recreational activity, even though it may be calming, it's much different than meditation. So we'd encourage people to do both and allot time for that. Now, if you could kind of break down, you've talked about the highlights of Vedic meditation. Maybe someone doesn't have access to you in New York or LA or San Francisco. So if they're curious, they're Googling meditation, like transcendental meditation, like what would be maybe some other options that you think are pretty good to kind of look into?
Yeah, great question. So I teach independently, and I'm a part of a guild of teachers. It's a worldwide network. And you can find my colleagues at vedicnetwork.com. And I have colleagues who are based all over the world, mostly Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Chicago, New York, and we have a number of colleagues who tour through DC, Miami, Toronto. We have colleagues in London and a number of colleagues out in Australia. So all over the world you can find us. And I would start there if you like the sound of this technique and you want to explore it. That's where I would start.
Fantastic. So Hunter, for some practical tips here, like you and I are doing this interview and let's say I was like Fox News or CNN or something like that. Would you do like 5 minutes beforehand and then maybe during the interview, what sort of breathing techniques or mindfulness-based techniques to stay present? I found if I move my toes, that helps keep me present if I'm ever nervous. Do you have any other tips that's maybe not so much meditation related, but for people that are in high pressure situations, that real time now, what can they do to be more present and have better intention?
Yes, there's this great tool called Come to Your Senses. Come to Your Senses is where you take a moment to recognize, oh wow, my mind is racing, I'm nervous, it's thinking about things in the future or the past. When you have that moment of recognition where you're noticing that the mind is not in the present moment, you can use this tool. Mm-hmm. And what it is it's very simple. You just, if you're somewhere where you can sit and close your eyes, you can do that, or you can just sit still and keep your eyes open, whatever feels comfortable to you, and you simply take a deep breath and you notice what each of your senses is experiencing one at a time. So maybe you start with your sense of smell. You'll sit there and close your eyes and you'll take a deep breath. And, it's a nice spring day, so you're smelling some of that, nice floral air. Or maybe you're in an office space and it smells stuffy. Whatever it is, it doesn't need to be a nice thing. It's whatever's there present in that present moment. You're just going to notice that. So you notice what you smell, and then you'll notice what you're tasting. Maybe it's right after lunch, so there's a little bit of that, kale salad and avocado still on your breath, and you're tasting that. And then you notice, what do you hear? Maybe it's, your colleagues typing on their computers and chatting on the phone, or maybe you're outside in the park and you hear some birds. And then you'll notice what you feel. What is the quality of the cotton of your shirt on your shoulders? What does it feel like sitting in the chair you're sitting in? And just notice that. And then, you can open your eyes and take a look around and notice what you see. And simply just by noticing and taking note of each one of your five senses, what each one of those five senses is experiencing in that moment, it helps bring the mind back into the present moment. So I definitely recommend trying that. It's a great tool whenever you notice that your mind isn't being present.
I love it. It's fantastic. Since being, kind of made aware of, this different way of being more present, being more connected and focused and so forth, or since 2009, I've been, reading miscellaneous books on this. The level of connection that you can have with other humans, whether it's in an intimate relationship, a friendship, a business deal, it's much better. And I used to always kind of you get over nervous and, confuse issues in my head. And then, that level of connection was not there. And so these, these relationships would never really get as solidified as I would have liked them to do, whether it be business or with friends or something. So I think it's really important for everyone listening, even if you're not into this quite yet, to be aware of that. And like Hunter said, just come to your senses. That's a really great tip. And the smell and the sounds, if you really listen, there's always some sounds, whether it's you hear birds or your neighbor's dog, or like you said, keyboards going. So love those tips there, Hunter. And one thing we like to ask, before we move into the final questions that we like to ask every guest on the show is is there anything about meditation or being mindful or present that you'd like to share that we didn't get to touch on?
I think we covered some really important points. Being aware that techniques of sitting and closing your eyes in meditation, like that type of meditation where you're actually sitting and closing your eyes, is much different than getting in a meditative state through sport and activity, because the body is moving in two completely different directions. In the technique of Vedic meditation, you're de-exciting the body rather than moving in activity, and it's the de-excitement, that action of de-excitement, that actually gives the body the rest it needs to release stress from the system. And any kind of physical activity will make you feel good, and it'll pump the body with nice chemistry that feels nice, but it's not going to get rid of those deep stresses in your system. So and everything in balance and moderation. As a culture, especially in America, whenever we hear something good, we just put everything into it. And, oh, I heard, honey is really good for you, so I'm going to go buy gallons of it and eat spoonfuls every day. No, everything in moderation, right? Even with meditation, there is such thing as too much meditation. And 20 minutes twice a day in this particular style of meditation is the optimal amount of time. Sometimes, I have students who learn and they love it so much that they just want to meditate all day, all the time. And, it doesn't quite work that way. And what we're interested in seeing is integrating the benefits of meditation gradually over time into modern life. If we do too much meditation, it can simply make us a little spacey or disconnected. Mm-hmm. And we don't want that. We want to be engaged and productive, and we're looking to harness the benefits to enhance our lives rather than take away from it. Mm-hmm. And that's the point of meditation. The technique's not to escape from our busy lives and get away, but rather harness the qualities of the experience of meditating, bringing that into activity and sharing that with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Fantastic. I think that'd be a good problem if it were to ever be a problem. If people were over meditating, at least we wouldn't be so stressed potentially. But I don't think we have to worry about that anytime soon. But great tips there, Hunter. So one thing we like to talk about here at High Intensity Health, we know that healthy people have routines, and particularly morning and evening routines. So we would love to hear from you. You have a very busy, successful meditative practice and have a lot of clients throughout the world that reach out to you, and you're a mover and shaker. So what do you do first thing in the morning? Let's kind of talk about, your ideal day. What would that look like?
My ideal day. Great question. I really enjoy waking up with the sunrise and greeting the sun in the morning. It's a great way to start the day. Early bird catches the worm. I found with my age, it's taken some time and transition into getting into that early morning rising routine. But with meditation and growing older, I found it to be much more enjoyable and really easy to do. And it feels really wonderful. So I like to do that. I'll wake up. I'll have a glass of, water. Sometimes I'll have a little squeeze of lime or lemon in that water, and just to kind of wake up the body from the inside out. I never like to have ice or cold water, but just something nice and warm and soothing. And then I'll take a shower, brush my teeth, and do meditation. And from there, I'll wake up and make myself breakfast. For breakfast, typically, sometimes I'll make, a nice gluten-free porridge with some steamed apples and, a little cinnamon, maybe some honey. And I'm a big fan of raw cultured butter, so I eat a lot of that, which is delicious. And once I've had breakfast, I'll start my day. I'll get to work. Sometimes I do, probably every other day, I'll do a morning workout routine. And typically I'll actually do this before meditation. When you get the body moving and stretching and the muscles working, it helps to prepare the body for meditation. Yoga asanas, the yoga poses, like a yoga class, is actually meant to prepare the body for meditation. So if you enjoy yoga, it's a great thing to do prior to sitting in meditation. So I'll do that. And what else? Yeah, I'll have a great day. I like to go to the farmer's market. I bike everywhere in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and I'll bike over the bridge into Manhattan and meet clients. If it's a farmer's market day, I'll go and pick up some fresh local vegetables and fruits, and they're all in season. That's the best way to actually tell what foods are in season and what's good right now is by what they're able to sell at the farmer's market. Especially out here in New York, we have the 4 seasons, and so you can see those shift in produce happen as the seasons change. And and then that's pretty much how I would start my day. And then I'll find some time to do an afternoon meditation. If it's nice out, like right now, it's springtime. If I'm out biking in the city, I'll stop by maybe Washington Square Park or one of the little gardens in the East Village and find a nice little spot to meditate. If it's the winter time, I'll meditate on the subway. Anywhere I can sit down and feel safe and comfortable, I'll do my second meditation. And then from there, before I meditated, I'd come home from work or class, back when I was studying engineering, and I would just want to, turn my brain off, turn on like a silly TV show and order in food and just kind of veg out. And when I started doing this practice twice daily, the afternoon meditation completely changed my evenings. I started feeling this energy coming, just this inner wakefulness, and that tired, lazy feeling and that procrastination kind of melted away. So I found myself wanting to cook and clean and work on projects all into the evening, which is what I continue to do. And I wasn't much of a cook before meditation. It just came to me that I just really wanted to get into cooking. So I started cooking, and it's been really fantastic exploring Vedic cooking, which is the ancient science of longevity and optimum health, which also comes from the Veda, where this meditation technique comes from. And so I've learned over the years through experience and from a few teachers that I know here in the city, different ways of cooking food that are help to optimize one's health and longevity. And so I've been applying that to my cooking, and I also do teach cooking classes, and I share that with my students. And it's been a nice it's been a nice aspect to incorporate along with the meditation. So yeah.
That's awesome. Gosh, there's many great tips to take away there, but I want to kind of underscore and emphasize 2 of them. The first one was doing yoga and activity before meditation. And admittedly, Hunter, I've been trying to do the opposite. And sometimes I wonder why I do heart math. I found that to be the easiest and want to learn from you. And so we'll talk about that later. But what I found is if I would do a series of yoga poses before, I could easily get into that high coherent state with the heart math device, which would kind of be the most meditative like state. And so I was always kind of like trying to like force it, doing the other way around. So for folks listening, if you have a hard time getting to that calm state, do what Hunter said and try and do some yoga poses beforehand. And I think a lot of people resonate with the evening routine. Unfortunately, your previous evening routine, Hunter, of vegging out, doing this real passive, watching TV or getting on the internet, watching YouTube, whatever it may be. But it's interesting where a lot of people say they want to cook better, but they're too tired to, they're, after work, exhausted and so forth. So doing this afternoon-based meditation. That's huge. And we always hear, kind of do it before you go to bed and when you wake up. And so I think that's a really nice tip for a lot of people. If you suffer from that kind of evening fatigue, try what Hunter's saying in the afternoon, if you can, before you get home. And I haven't been doing that, and I'm going to try that myself. So I'm excited. I'll let you know how that goes. Now, third or second question here is, if there was one food substance or maybe dietary supplement ingredient that you really think is medicinal and has a lot of benefits and that people should be consuming, what would that food or ingredient or supplement be, and why?
Good question. I would say, first of all, everything in moderation. So many times we see, oh, this one supplement, it's so good for you. And then we just gobble it down and we could become imbalanced in a different direction because we've overdone it with this new particular, health fad, if you will. So everything always in moderation. And what I would say is, I found incredible benefits with raw cultured dairy products. I have to say, specifically in New York, where it gets very, very cold here in the winters, I found that I was able to generate a really nice, sustainable heat inside the body just by consuming, local grass-fed raw milk and butter and yogurt, and obviously in moderate amounts, pretty liberally actually sometimes. But in the wintertime, I was able to generate this heat where I wouldn't get bone chill. The first few years I lived in New York, I had a pretty tough time, especially growing up in California. It was a big shift in the seasons for me. So to help me adjust to that, I found raw dairy to be incredibly beneficial. Again, everything in moderation, and it's always good to have a variety of everything. But I would say, look into that. It's not always, depending on where you live, it's not always easy to come by, a good, legitimate source. But do some research and maybe you'll discover something that's beneficial. Yeah, and I found even too, there's a lot of lactose intolerance out there as well. I found myself with buying dairy products from the store, just conventional dairy products, my throat would always get scratchy. So I kind of cut dairy out for a little while and I felt better. And then gradually I incorporated raw dairy into my diet, and I don't have any of the symptoms that I used to get with, pasteurized dairy products that you would buy at the store. So there is a big difference between the two. When you're eating something that's alive and raw with the cultures and enzymes all intact and living versus, something that's been boiled out and, manipulated and homogenized and turned into this product rather than nutrients. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're at over show 90 here, and no one said raw dairy before, so that's a first. And would agree with you. I think I told you this when we met in New York a couple weeks ago. My daughter, we supplemented her, breastfeeding with raw goat's milk, and she really thrived on that. And it was really great to introduce some good bugs into her diet and stuff. So great info there. So Hunter, the second final question here would be, is if there was one lifestyle or health tip you would want to share with President Barack Obama or a future president in an elevator ride. You just had 30 or 60 seconds to share with them, something about mindfulness, meditation, something you wish they could reverberate around America and help improve the health of America and reduce healthcare expenditures. What would that health tip be, and why?
Meditation. And what I would say is learn this technique, and I would show them how to meditate. And then I would, let the president know that they do this practice twice a day and simply show by example. We see every president, every 4 years, we see a president age dramatically in a 4-year period. And that's because of the amount of stress and pressure that they have with their job, running the country. And so there's a direct correlation, obviously, between stress and aging, and your biological age versus your chronological age. And some studies have shown that the average American actually ages 1.2 times faster than their actual chronological age, and we see it even more rapid with people in positions of power, such as the presidency. So, what I would want to do is actually just teach them this technique of meditation and see how they do over a 4-year period of actually doing this practice twice a day, and then sharing their experience with the people, and coming from that place of experience rather than an agenda of some kind because someone told them to. I think if it came from themselves through their own experience, it would be a lot more powerful. So that's what I would say.
Love it. Fantastic. Awesome, Hunter. Well, we really appreciate you coming on the show. Great information that you shared with us. So thank you for that. Now, let's kind of plug your website and your online resources. So if folks want to maybe attend a class that you teach or connect with you online, what are the best channels that you have?
So the best way to get in contact with me and find out about courses that I have is to go to my website, which is themodernmind.com. And from there, you can contact me directly and send me a personal message, or you can find out the details of my upcoming courses, and then we'll take it from there.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Hunter. Hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. It's been great to speak with you.